Hello and welcome back to our Custom Recipes app. In the last lesson we completed the design for all 4 screens, as you can see here. This lesson is focused on the blocks editor, so let's jump on over to the blocks editor. Since we're on screen 1, let's bring in a screen 1 initializer event block. Next we'll need to enable the timer, so I'll bring in a set clock 1 timer enabled block. And we'll set its value to true. Next, add a when clock 1 timer event block, which gets fired exactly 3 seconds after the timer is enabled. As the first action, we need to disable the timer, so we can duplicate the set block and change its value to false. At this point, we're ready to launch screen main. So we'll come over here and choose and open another screen block. And set the screen name to main. Now let's test what we've done so far. First, we'll connect to the companion, wait a few seconds, and we see our splash screen. And after about 3 seconds, the app should jump to the main page. So it looks like we're good to go. Now let's work on that main page. So we'll go up here to the Screens menu and select Main. We're going to need lots of variables for this screen, so let's start adding them now. So I'll set the first variable to an empty list. Now let's duplicate this variable 5 more times. Now let me rename these variables and reposition things on the screen. Pause the video now and enter these names for the 6 variables. Then click play when you're ready to proceed. The title, subtitle, image, URL, and description are the keys in our data source, which is called recipes.json. This is a snapshot of our data source. Notice that it contains key value pairs, such as title, subtitle, image, URL, and so forth. Our data source contains 10 of these items. We will be using the file1 component to retrieve this information and store each key value pair in the list variables that we just set up. Let's add one more variable, a counter, to track the items in our list. Set the variable name to iCount. And give it a number value equal to 1. So now we're ready to proceed with the logic blocks for our page. First, let's add a main initialize component. Next, add a file1 reader component, which will read in the contents of our data source. Now we need to set the file name. So let's use a text component and set the name to recipes.json. Notice that we need to precede the file name with 2 slash characters, which tells Consular that this file exists in the local storage on our device. Now let's bring in a file1 got.text block. This block will be called after file1 has finished loading the contents of our data source. The first action is to initialize our food list with the decoded string returned by the file1 component. For that, we'll use a web1 JSON text decode block. and set the text property to the text that was passed in by the file1 component. Now we'll use a for each block to loop through all of the items in our food list. So we'll attach a food list variable as the list property. Next, we'll begin setting up our food list component. Recall that for each item in our food list, we will have an image, a title, and a subtitle. So before we can add an item, we need to set up these three key pieces of information as we iterate through our loop. First, let's set up the list of titles. Now bring in a lookup pairs in key block. We'll set the key to the string title. And for the pairs property, we'll use a select list item block. Then set the list property to our food list variable. And set the index to iCount. So in other words, we're setting the title list variable to the first title value from the food list. Now we can repeat this process for the image and subtitle variables. So we'll duplicate this block and change the pointer from title list to image list. And also change the name of the key to image. Now we'll duplicate again and change image list to subtitle list and change the key name to subtitle. Now we can perform an update to our food list view. So we'll bring in a food list add item block and set the image property to our image list. Then set the title property to our title list and set the subtitle property to our subtitle list. Now we need to increment our counter. So we'll drag in a set counter block, then attach an addition block from the math category, set the left side to our counter and the right side to a number 1. So for each item in the list, the counter will be incremented by 1 until there are no items remaining in the list. And at that point, we should be able to view the complete list of recipe items on the main screen. So let's test our app again. Connect to Companion. Wait for the connection. And there's our list. Now we need to program what happens when a user taps on an item in the list. We'll take that up in the next video. So once again, thanks for watching.